welcome. Come on in. Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Glad you all can come. I have a feeling we're all going to have to kind of spread out.
No.
I got chairs here and there if anybody doesn't want to stand for an hour and a half, so please feel free to grab a chair if you need it. Jeremy, you want to just talk?
Yeah, I just want to, can we just thank Bonnie for doing this for us? We really appreciate, Bonnie, the work that you do here at the ALPLM, and we're certainly excited to learn more about what you and your staff do up here. So thank you for allowing us to have that kind of behind-the-scenes view of all that you do today. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, welcome to the ALPLM Conservation Lab. My name is Bonnie Parr, and you probably already know that. I'm the Historical Documents Conservator for the library. My assistant, Ginny. And I have an intern who just started a couple weeks ago, Christy. And I just wanted to kind of show you what we do here and kind of explain a bit how we fit into the whole organization. First of all, I want to start off with explaining what conservation and preservation are. They're sometimes used interchangeably, and which is okay, but I'll explain how I interpret it. But for me, conservation is the actual physical treatment of the physical item. So we do a lot of cleaning, we repair things, we remove harmful things like tape or rusty paper clips, that sort of thing. We make boxes, we cut mats, things that will improve the item's condition, like removing harmful components and making them so that they will last a little bit longer or be more accessible for use, for research, or make them look pretty. That's usually for instances of putting things on display. For me, preservation is kind of the overall topic, of which conservation is one part of it. Other things that we do here as far as preservation are monitoring the environment in our storage areas. So we monitor the temperature and humidity to make sure that they are kept at levels that are going to be best for preserving material. We watch for light exposure, like on the displays. You probably noticed in the museum that lights are pretty low, especially in the treasures gallery. And there's a reason for that, because of materials are so sensitive to light they can fade, and actually that kind of damage is permanent. You cannot undo fading ink or yellowing or whatever happens with long-term light exposure. So I'm monitoring the environment in our, mainly for me, I'm monitoring the environment in our storage areas, our stacks. I work with the registrar, and she kind of helps with the museum end with the exhibit places. Other thing that we do is look at areas in the library, procedures, handling of materials, and try to improve, make them so that they're safe for the artifacts. So training for staff and visitors in a certain sense. I answer questions for people that have preservation related questions like, what will I do? I have a Civil War letter, how can I preserve it? So providing information, that's one of the areas of preservation. Another thing that we do is we assist the exhibits department in the museum with preparing at least our collection materials for display. So we will do any kind of conservation work, cleaning, repairs, whatever, to make the item stable enough so that it can be put on display. And we also cut the mats and things for the flat paper items. Otherwise, I work with the exhibits department on just, if we have any issues of the environment in the galleries, or if we're going to loan something out, we want to find out if the person or the institution borrowing materials, if they have adequate safety and environmental conditions. So that's sort of an overview. Let me show you some of the stuff we actually work on. And I'm going to move around here and go over here. Christy, I'm gonna start with you. All right. Now, Christy just started with us, so she's still learning some basics. If you all wanna kinda come here, and actually come around here too, if you wanna, I'll kinda step out of the way for a moment and have you kinda, hopefully you can sort of see. So what she's doing, she is learning how to mend paper. And she's practicing right now on scraps of paper. So she's not actually mending the Lincoln documents yet. You will eventually, possibly. And so basically, one thing is we don't use tape to repair tears in paper. Tape is a 4-letter word in this. Because tape is not an archival material. It's too strong with that adhesive. It's too strong for the very fragile papers we're dealing with. And a lot of times that cut edge on tape, if we have a very fragile paper, it's very brittle, it'll just break right over the edge of the tape. So it's not a good kind of repair when the paper will break right over the repair. And over the long term, tape can deteriorate and stain paper. So what we use is wheat starch paste. This is our basic material, which is a water reversible paste. And it's I don't know if you'd say it's acid free, but it's a reversible kind of material. And we use tissues. And so generically this is called Japanese tissue. It comes in many forms of thicknesses, thinnesses, some kind of, this is sort of a kind of a yellowy type tissue which blends in very well with old paper. And here, I'll tell you what, I'll grab a sample here. And Jeremy, I'll start with you and then pass it around kind of like this so you can handle it all you want. We probably won't use it for repairing documents, so that's okay.
What's the tissue made out of?
It's actually the bark of mulberry bush. A lot of times. It is a plant-based tissue, and what's important about it is it has actually very long fibers for a paper, and those are make for flexibility and blending into paper. And I have a fairly thin tissue that I use here, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correct, but this is how it's spelled, Kizu Kishi. And I understand that in Japanese that means tissue paper. So, but that's our, this is what's available in the catalogs.
What is reversible?
Reversible means that should, in the future, we think, oh, we got to remove that repair, easy to take it right off, and it doesn't affect the document. And, unlike tape, which takes a lot more effort to take off. And I'll get to you, Jimmy.
Segue.
But anyway, so we use paste and tissue, and Christy has been learning, let's see, I've got some better examples on the first little thing there. Yeah, she's been learning how to use, make little strips and paste, and just remember, these are early. Early attempts. Again, I'm going to just start here and work my way around, okay?
You can make your own paste.
Yes, we do. It's a powder that comes in wheat starch powder, and then we use distilled water. Excuse me, I'm sorry, and mix it up and stir it. And
When we were young, we used to use flour and water.
It's kind of a similar idea, and I cannot remember. I mean, we would not use flour, but it's a similar kind of material. I cannot remember what the issue would be with flour for permanent conservation, such, but.
Did you want to feel?
As I say, you can do terrible. Oh, you want to look at it? Sorry, I don't know if you can sort of see the long fibers or not.
Yes.
They're kind of subtle there. Oh yeah, wheat flour. So I'm not flour. I'm not sure. I think that probably that could be a type of paste. I just don't remember the properties of it compared to what we use now.
But you can buy the commercial, whatever you're using.
I go through archival suppliers that are well known for quality materials, and there's a variety of them. And if
if you, Jeremy, I can supply a list,
Okay.
some recommendations. So anyway, that's our basic repair is with tissue and paste. And what Christy's learning now, is practicing, is a little finer method where instead of a strip, we're actually pulling a fiber of the tissue. And there is some left still there?
Yeah, do you want me to pull some off?
Sure. Now I'll get out of your way and curve it like this. So it's pretty subtle, but she's pulling off.
An actual repair.
Yes.
Cool.
Yep. Now it's a little wrinkly, but remember,
Yeah.
this is a practice item. It will be flat when we have it drying.
Iron it.
No. You never put an iron directly
I'm just
on a
kidding.
historical document. But you can iron stuff, but you have to do it with a little barrier sheet. So anyway, Christy has pulled off a little tiny fiber with paste on it. And
Where did you pull that from?
Underneath that lid.
yeah, we have like a little square of the tissue paper sitting on top of paste. And actually it's a mix of two different pastes. I did talk about wheat starch, but we have another jelly-like one that's called methyl cellulose. Again, it's just another type of paste that we use. And so it's kind of a mix, which does well for this particular thing. And this whole idea is mending. Sometimes we have to mend on the front of a document, especially a map. For instance, I have a map out there. And because we got to line up the streets. And we can't do it backwards. So this way minimizes how much tissue and paste you're actually putting on the piece. I also will use this method on Lincoln documents because I don't really want to put a lot of modern materials on original material. So this is a method for doing a much finer repair. Do you want to just like air demo? Sorry.
How long does this last? Would this repair last?
Long as paper. It's a
And the
pretty stable
glue
material.
Doesn't turn yellow? Or
Nope. Nope.
If it were left out in the environment, would it yellow? Because your documents
Light.
are pretty well contained and
I would say probably
Roger.
the light would be an issue. That was yellow paper. I don't think the repair itself would deteriorate unless it's being damaged by the light or dirt.
Yes, good. If you can't see it.
That's the intended effect.
Where is it? Where is it? I can't see. Oh, now I see it. At first glance.
that's the only way I could tell the difference.
You know, I don't think she gets paid by the page. How long does a typical repair take, approximately?
Well, it's a lot of including drying time. You know, with the strip repair, we can put them down after we learn how to do them really quick. We can do it fairly easily, but then it dries. It takes a couple hours to dry. And frankly, what I'll do is a bunch of repairs in the morning, check them after lunch. This kind of repair with the tissue, and if you want to keep handing that around, that's fine. Actually dries pretty quick, like in about 15 minutes. And so I could be starting on one side of the map, mending stuff, and then by the time I get around, it's all dry, and I can kind of go back to
Now, has this map been mended?
Yes, it has. Shall we go ahead and Ginny, would you like to talk about this piece?
I love the giggle from behind Beth.
Ginny worked on this map, and let's see, you probably, I forget how long it took. A couple
I'm gonna
months?
say about 3 weeks.
3 weeks, okay.
Wow. Off and on.
Yeah.
Magnifying.
Yeah, this map is from 1848, and it was designed to be folded and carried in a pocket
Jeez.
and used out on the road.
Would you carry it in
And
your
when
car?
we got it, we did all kinds of things to it. When we got it, it was really crumply as well as dirty. And because it had been folded for so many years, when we
Wow.
unfolded it, like on a crease,
That is
not
impressive.
only was there a crease, but there was like an overlap,
Good job.
if that makes,
Yeah.
am I explaining that right?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can see it over that side.
So the first thing I did was to clean it,
That's awesome.
and we clean over on the table by the window, and we use eraser crumbs and an eraser, and that's one of my favorite things to do because it's so calming. But the technique is, and I guess we can show you that later, but the technique is to make careful circular movements with these little eraser crumbs, which do a fine job of picking up dirt. And yeah, it's really interesting.
If you look at the pre-show of how long ago was that? Anyway, there's my hand doing that with the eraser crumbs, and they got some really nice music on that. I think I call that eraser powdering music. I just
Where do you get eraser crumbs?
Again,
We
suppliers.
order them.
Archival suppliers. I was about getting to the point of, with no state budget, I'm going to have to buy some erasers and a grater and do it myself. I buy it prepared.
Yeah.
We used to do that. Dropped in
Yeah.
class.
So that was the first step with
Things
this.
would get so
And then
smudged.
I think the next step was humidification because of all the overlaps and the creases. And then as we were working with it, it split here, so there were two different parts. And with humidification, we use I don't guess we have one out, a tacking iron and wet blotting, a little piece of wet blotting paper covered with
Wow.
Pelline.
Cool.
And with the heat, the paper absorbs the moisture. And then I use the tacking iron to smooth it out. But I am telling you what, this map had been folded for so long that I would do our typical movement or procedure of adding dampness to it, and it would flatten out like it's supposed to, then it would go back. It's like, I don't want to do that.
It's been there years and years.
Yeah, so that's the first time I've had that happen.
Was it originally like this right here? Where
Yes.
this edge comes out over the other?
Yeah, we didn't trim it, that's just the way it arrived to us. Yeah.
You can see the folding lines.
What's Pelline?
Pelline, P-E-L-L-O-N, it's something you can buy in the fabric store for interfacing.
Oh, right.
It's called
Interfacing.
sewing.
Yeah, okay.
It's in most dresses.
They have different weights.
Yeah.
That's Pelline.
There you go. Yeah, there's
So-
Pelin.
There it is.
Yep.
Like an interlining.
I
Yeah.
tried, because it was split into two pieces, what I tried
Yeah,
to
just a little
do
bit heavier.
was line up the rivers.
reminded me
And
now.
it's not 100% perfect because of age and,
Well, and your water distribution would maybe stretch a little part out, and not so much on the other too.
yeah. So it's not quite perfect, but it's pretty doggone good. And
For
then,
1848.
I ended
Yes.
it,
Yeah.
with the
even in
tissue paper and the paste,
That's
as she explained. And,
Need to go retrieve some
I
of
did
those if
it
they
some
have
on the
over.
back. Of course, when you're mending on the back, you can't see exactly how it's gonna end up, so.
He's got some
Uh,
beautiful.
And then I did that technique that Kristen showed you with the little fibers, and that was on the front, and that is a very cool technique.
Was this an item that was recently donated or something that we received a while back and we just?
No,
waiting
this
to-
has been in the collection for a long time.
The color is so good, was that, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
amazing.
hand
You didn't have to do
watercolor,
anything
how
over
it
the
lasted
color.
all that time is rather
Wow,
amazing.
that's
Well,
impressive.
that's the
Who carried the map?
Do we know who carried it?
What do you mean, carried?
Who owned it in their pocket?
I have no idea.
Was it
Sorry.
something Lincoln carried?
Whose
No.
pocket was it in?
No, not related to Lincoln. And the other interesting aspect of this map is that at this time, where is Chicago?
It was very
Yeah,
tiny.
when I was here, it was not that
In
big.
48,
of a
it wasn't
city.
very big at all.
Uh,
This Springfield, I
Galena-
think, was bigger in 48 than Chicago was. At one time, it
Yes.
was bigger.
Galena was a much more
And then they
important
opened up that
city.
waterway, when they opened up the waterway.
Northwest corner.
Yes.
West of Rockford.
And Alton was a big,
About was Vandalia the capital?
Not in
Upper
48,
Alton,
no.
yeah, Upper Alton was, these two cities were much more important, yeah, important
Yeah,
than
39.
Chicago was.
The rusting, is that caused by light or water or kind of rusting? It's caused
On the,
by-
on the
Is
bends.
that caused by light or water damage over time? Like this line right here?
Yes. Actually, I think that looks almost like an ink stain.
Ah,
Or, actually, now come think of it, when this was folded up, this was probably an exposed
Edge.
edge.
so just
So,
like
yeah, light,
combination.
dirt, and there might be an ink stain.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we'll show you this back.
Same line
Just a little bit too, so I got you there.
So this is one of the things we've done an awful lot of work on,
It's
and
neat.
we get stuff like this, it just varies. Sometimes very simple repairs, sometimes lots of things to do.
What determines what piece you're working on?
Where's it go?
What are you gonna do with it now?
Well, how it happens is that the different people in the different departments in the library, the staff will point these things out to me. They're the first line of showing me, like this one, which was a patron had used it, and then it was really in just awful shape, and so the reference librarian said, Bonnie, could you take care of this, because I don't want to use it again until, because it's just, we're going to lose something. So a lot of times it's the curators or the people on staff of the departments that'll bring stuff to me or get it to my attention, have a look at it. And when that happens, then what I do is I write up a condition report and kind of describe the piece and what the physical characteristics, and then I'll so this segment is the what's wrong with it, where I just kind of say, oh yeah, there's tears, there's tape, there's whatever, and then I put down kind of suggestions for suggestions for treatment, and then this becomes a record of treatment. And we can also add to that treatment as we find, we have to do a different method than what I thought maybe. Because sometimes we'll find more things as we work with the piece. So I write the condition report, and then we start. And usually we start with cleaning, because we want to remove the surface dirt, whatever will readily come off first before we do any moisture or anything further, because we don't want to grind in the dirt. And if it will come off easily, it's removed. It's one harmful element that's removed from the paper. This one's in process, but it's kind of hard to see. This is a little print of Andrew Jackson, and actually there's another document related to it that's talks about his death. We had to do some cleaning. We got some tape we're working on here, and it's still a little sticky, so I've covered it over while I decide what further I'm going to do with that. Because unfortunately this is some tape that isn't coming off easy, and I don't want to interfere with the print, the picture. And as far as the scope of treatment, that's my decision. And part of it is, what does a curator want? How is it going to be used? Is it going in the reading room, going to get heavy use, so we're going to do a lot of work to get it so that it'll be stand up to lots of handling? Is it going to go on display, so we want to clean it up so it looks good? Is it an artifact like the Gettysburg Address? I'm going to minimize how much I actually do on those. Just what is necessary, and not, we just don't want to add so much modern stuff, because, it's the Gettysburg Address. And what does the piece need? And what are my resources of supplies, staff, and time? So I would love to fix every book we've got, but I don't have time. So sometimes all that's needed is to make a box to keep everything together and protect it on the shelf versus a full rebind. And I'm gonna bring this over to Jenny again. I'll bring it over to you, Jenny.
Okay.
Talking about a rebind, another project she was involved in.
This is the Cook County Yearbook, 1900-1901, which I rebound. It's darling. And it arrived in the department looking like this.
This is not an original cover to it. This is a rebind from probably the early 1900s, I would imagine.
Oh, okay.
It's not the original 1900 one, or whatever.
And the last half of this version of the book were blank pages. So our idea was to remove the blank pages.
Which were very brittle and
Yeah,
acidic.
oh yes. Paper of this time was notoriously brittle and breakable. So what I did was we do a lot of careful measuring, and we used binder's board to create a new binding. So I cut binder's board and selected this color. This is called book cloth. And then selected the end bands. And gosh, I guess I did some mending and cleaning on this as well.
Yeah, you guarded every page, I think.
That's
Which is
right.
kind of a repair to support the folded part of the page.
Yeah, and
And then
repaired
you lined that
Frontis.
original cover.
frontispiece.
And what was recorded in there?
Well, golly. A list of people on various committees.
Okay.
Committee on Public Service, Investigations. That's an interesting question. There is a Thomas Daly in here, and I did not research it to see if it was a relation. Oh wait, James Daly, sorry, of 2065 Wilcox Avenue in Chicago. Anyway, it is completely well done, and completely.
It is well done.
And-
But she had to do the complete work.
And well
on it.
done.
Complete work on
But I
it.
just think it's the cutest thing. I hope it doesn't get lost on the shelf sometime.
So Jenny, how many hours would you say dedicated to that project?
Well, let's see, you had to
Several
mend the
days.
pages.
Yeah.
Oh, several days, I'm saying several weeks, because you also had to line that cover with tissue.
Oh, right, yeah.
More,
Custom-
that's even,
Custom cut paper for the end
And you do all that
sheets.
here in your
and
lab?
she sewed it.
Uh-huh. Oh, and sewing was involved too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, where did you go to get it sewed, or did you
Here.
sew it here?
Wow. Thanks to my teacher, who is an expert in such matters.
Uh-huh.
Books like this have signatures, which are sections of pages that are together, and so we have this in and out technique to sew each signature, and then we sewed them together here, which
Do you have a machine, or you do that by hand?
by hand,
By hand.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So it did take me a while,
Mhm.
yeah, like a couple of weeks.
Did you know what the original cover looked like? You said that wasn't the original.
That's not the original, no,
Well, I think it was a pamphlet, to be honest, because the Rebind back in the day
Oh, that's right.
had all this blank paper to make it thick enough like a book. And so, frankly, we just took it out and it's back to the original thickness. And I think the one page that you lined, I think that's the original front cover of the pamphlet. That's,
Oh,
you know, it's
yes.
broken up. I mean,
Yeah.
you can see a lot of it's lost on the edges because it's so little. But
You're the type of paperback.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think it was probably side sewn or side stapled because if you look at pages, you might be able to see the hole on the side originally,
Now,
and then
would
it was,
this
that was taken out.
repaired like this, could someone request this for, if they were doing a study or something
It's
through the
usable now.
library? It was usable, okay.
Yeah, before it was falling out and
You
falling
couldn't-
apart.
They wouldn't let it go out.
Yeah.
Would that go into the stacks here, or?
Yes,
Yeah, so
yes. Mhm.
Cool.
Now, what will you do with that part?
Think about saving it. Just for reference, I like the decorative end sheets.
Those are
And,
cool.
you know, this might be good to talk about in the future.
Great,
Yeah.
After.
So those are kind of some of the fun things.
Oh, and then the last part for this was to encapsulate it, to protect it. And,
Oh, yeah. I guess I could do that demo, couldn't I? All right. And Melanex is actually the trade name, Mylar. Anyway. So, let me just demonstrate here. This is an ultrasonic welder. And this is what we use for encapsulation. Now, encapsulation is just sandwiching the document between two sheets of polyester film. It is not a permanent thing. It's just sealed around the edges. If we had to take it out, we could just cut the seals and take out the document. This is different from lamination, another dirty word in this lab, which is actually using heat, I think, and adhesive to bond pieces of plastic to paper. And that is only reversible with some pretty toxic chemicals, of which I do not do. So essentially, if I get a laminated item, that's going to stay laminated.
what do you call this again?
This is an ultrasonic welder for encapsulation.
Encapsulation.
Yeah. So what I have here are a couple pieces of mylar or polyester film. This kind of plastic, it has no coatings on it, so it is an inert. It's chemically inert, and currently considered an archival plastic. It will last a long time. Doesn't yellow, doesn't get brittle or anything. And so what I'm doing here is I'm just cleaning up off the dust bits because we want it to be clean. And I'm also building up some static electricity, which will, when I have a piece in there, kind of holds it in place. So anyway. So pretend that I have a document in here.
no,
So we're lined up here. And so what this welder does, oh, by the way, this is a magnetized piece of vinyl, actually, I guess. But
Oh, cool.
vinyl is not really a good plastic, but this isn't going permanently against a historical document. But what it does is it not only to hold the piece in place, but it's also pushing out the air in between those two layers.
Wow. Awesome.
So what this is, electricity transferring is actually going to pound the polyester film together to make the weld. And it operates with a foot pedal like an old Singer sewing machine. And if it's okay, you see how silent it is? If it starts to squeal, I'll know there's something wrong. So it's like 30,000 times a second or some such thing, but it makes the weld. So it's pretty strong. Now, yeah, granted, if you're going to tear it this way, it'll tear right up.
Yeah.
But it's a nice little weld. Again, I'll
awesome.
start on this end if you want to just have a look at that. So we do hundreds and hundreds of encapsulations because we usually do our maps. I will encapsulate paper things before we map them if it's appropriate, because that's a layer of
Really neat.
protection on display, especially if something is in a case. It's nice to have that for if something's handled a lot, then people can look at the piece, but they're not touching it directly with their fingers. Because we don't want to transfer sweat or skin oils onto our documents.
Is that, you don't have to worry then about humidity or anything like that going into that piece or heat while it's out in the open?
Well, that's why we maintain good environmental conditions in our museum and in our stacked areas. Yes, over time, if we got really hot and moist conditions, it could eventually seep into that. The Mylar does provide a barrier, so there's a delay. So it's not, it is slightly permeable, but not very.
But over a long period of time, if it is subject to bad conditions, yeah, eventually it will get in. But I did a little test one time where I encapsulated a sample thing, and not a real thing, and then I put it in water. I immersed it in water and let it sit overnight to see if any water would seep in after I sealed all 4 edges. No water. Nope, it didn't get in.
So Bonnie, on a larger item like the map there, how would you do that with it not being able to cover it? Do you guys have kind of to hold it, or is there a special technique that you guys have?
I've got more, this is not a good example, I got a big piece of magnetized vinyl. I bought a yard of it, you can buy it by the yard and cut it up, and I have a big piece that's the size of this whole surface. And something big like that, it takes 2 people, and obviously I can only weld this much, but we can move it and position it to continue. So yeah, we can do any size of piece on this. But it just takes, more than one
So
person.
is this the latest, I mean, this is,
I've had this since 1997. It is a nice thing to have because it's very, I like the nice seal. It's a small, it looks clean. I think for display purposes it looks nice. And a lab is very lucky to have one because they're not cheap. Still making them in the field, in the conservation field. And there's probably somewhat newer models, but this one has been working very well for us. So it's more than paid for itself. For us, especially since we do such a quantity of pieces.
is that stack of books providing weight for some
Yes.
document?
Exactly. Not to worry, these are not library books.
Very
Congressional, administrative, federal tax regulations, no, from 1986. No, these are withdrawn books from another place. And we have a lot of these. They make great weights. Plus, I can also, for instance, I may be teaching Christy about something with attaching a book page or something, and these make great sample. Do terrible things too, kind of thing. And I'll just show you, I humidified an item, and then this was, I humidified a piece, and then I had to put it between blotting paper and let it dry. And it's kind of a funny thing. It's a clock face. And frankly, this is from our engineers. They had a clock and it got wet or something, and this paper face, there's a little stain on the back, but it got really wrinkly. And so the hand, of course, kind of went knock against the paper. They said, "Can you do anything? Because we're just gonna." I said, "Hey, let's give it to us. We'll give it a try." We humidified it. Now it's flatter than a pancake. I can't wait to give it to them because they'll be so impressed. You want to maintain good relations with your facilities staff because they're the ones that handle the air handling system. Because I have monitors. We call them data loggers. And you've probably seen them in the display cases. They're little boxes, little black boxes, and we have them covered up in display cases so people aren't going to notice them that much, but they read the temperature and humidity. And actually they're wireless, and so we can access them on our computer and get a whole record of readings. And so that's how I monitor our stack areas. I've got data loggers scattered around. Oh, Ginny, I guess you could bring over, I got one in that room. The data logger.
Okay.
It's just sitting on the table.
Okay.
And I have it in there because the room is actually pretty cold, and so I've got it there just to, it's okay. There's nothing really problem there, but I have it there just as a cold sampler.
59 degrees.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a problem right there in that room, but that's okay. Nobody works in there. It's a storage room. But anyway, so if I see something in the records, the heat's going up, or there's a spike of humidity, I can talk to our chief engineer, and he and his staff can then go and tweak the system. So we kind of work together on that. He has his monitors, he checks ours as well, and we just kind of keep it so we can maintain the conditions. And I know Carla does the same thing in the museum with the areas that she has. So that's how we monitor. And as I say, it's always good to be on good relations with your engineers and your janitors, because frankly, they keep the building in good shape. And you know.
Do you have any
letting-
dust filters special for this room, or?
No, but they do have lots of filters and the air handling system for the
For
air
everybody
quality.
else.
But yeah, you're right, we deal with a lot of dust and everything.
Well, I was thinking it would coat something, you know, that your air
Well-
wasn't clear.
Well, we also deal with really dusty stuff.
Yeah, oh, I bet you do.
You create your own dust.
Okay, Jenny, now that you're out there, I don't know, I don't have anything really dirty, but should I take like one of those pages maybe? And I could demonstrate eraser powder. Yeah, I got my gloves on. So I shake it out pretty generously. As I say, it kind of looks like that Kraft Parmesan cheese. I'm gonna say it tastes like it too, but no, I haven't tasted
The
it.
restaurant's really fun.
I like Kraft Parmesan cheese, actually. Anyway, so I have an eraser dedicated to the purpose, and I'm wearing a glove because I'm holding this down with my hand, so I don't want a bare hand on this. And so I am rolling the eraser powder around with this eraser, and I say dedicated to the purpose. And I can be fairly light, or I can be more vigorous, and it kind of depends on the fragility of paper. I happen to know that this particular paper is really fragile, so I'm being very light here.
So you're not putting a lot of pressure on it?
No, just letting it roll around.
Very touchy.
And what it's doing is it's picking up any surface dirt. And I chose this corner because I think I saw a little bit of dirt there. I hope then you'll be able to see some result here. Sometimes we're cleaning and nothing, and it's like, well, okay. So we've done a courtesy clean and call it good, but I think it might show a little bit of gray. So that's picked up some of the surface dirt off this paper. What this is a page out of a scrapbook that we just got fairly recently, Beggarly Masters.
Oh, wow.
And as near as I can tell, and I haven't really studied the contents yet much, but I believe he kept reviews of his work. I think this is what this is all about. But the pages are very wrinkly, as you see, and that's probably it's the nature of this particular kind of scrapbook page, because it was like little adhesive dots in vertical lines, and you moisten them and then you put down your piece. So that's why it's wrinkly like that.
Now, will you eventually straighten that out, or?
Well, you know what? I'm going to try. But I'm also deciding whether I'm going to actually try to take the pieces off, because there's some pieces that stuck to opposite pages and they're ripped. And there is some pages that have his writing on it, but it's covered up partially by stuff. So,
What you're sweeping off there, you
What I'm
don't
doing is-
keep and reuse, right?
no, I'm not going to reuse this. This is a one-time only, and then we'll use the vacuum cleaner to clean it up, but I'll just kind of sweep it up here, so hopefully you can kind of see it's sort of a light gray.
Yeah.
It's subtle.
Definitely,
So that's an indication that it's picked up that.
Do you ever get caught up in the material that you're working on and want to
Yes.
read it and just,
Of course.
Yeah, read as you circle.
One of my favorite pieces that we had was a collection of letters that a Civil War soldier wrote to his wife.
Oh,
And he
wow.
must have been writing like every other day to his
Wow.
wife, because it was like every other day. From the day he left the farm, and then he came up to Camp Butler to train, drill and everything. And then just headed out. And there's even one where he was in St. Charles, Missouri, and the stationary letterhead has like a little drawing of, the city, or the village or whatever. And then there's an arrow that says, this is where we are staying. Just like on a postcard where you here's the hotel we stayed at, here's our room, I just thought that was kind of
see
interesting.
this window?
And as he went down further south, he was a farmer, so he talked about what crops he was seeing and everything. And then he got more and more grim as he got through battles and things. And I was kind of surprised that he talked about where he was. I thought, well, isn't that classified, But I thought, well, I bet it probably took so long to mail. By the time it's done, I'm no expert on it, but it was interesting to read. And of course, he was just very descriptive, and he was very, he's going to save the Union, and he was very patriotic and everything. And of course, I wondered what his wife, how she felt. Was she the noble wife, send her man off? Well, there was one letter from her, and he had written across the writing in response. So And so I was reading, and I'm going, my gosh, she was mad for leaving her with 5 young children,
On the
with
farm.
a father-in-law she didn't get along with. And I was like, oh boy. And she's like, couldn't you get a job like back where you're in the back of the lines instead of in the front? You know, you could be a quartermaster instead of being on the field, you know. So I just thought, oh, that's interesting. No.
Oh,
Yeah, we were reading and going, ooh, ooh. Nope, 2 years in, he got shot. And the last letter is from his brother to the wife saying, I'm sorry he was shot. And, you know, he was shot off his horse and, you know, died, you know, in fighting the country and everything. And I was just like, oh. And then I was like, oh, what happened to the wife and the 5 kids?
yeah.
But unfortunately, his name was Smith, so I don't know. And that'll take a professional genealogist to maybe look that up. So I don't know. I heard that possibly one of the daughters married a future governor, but I do not know which one, if that is the case. And that's probably how that came to us. It was like a donation from a family.
So they knew it was really important to them.
But I don't know the collection, but it's in our manuscripts department. Anyway, that was really a fun, well, I mean, it was just a super interesting thing. Oh, one of the little letters that I just found was fascinating. He said, his writing, it says, so cold, the ink is freezing as I'm writing. And I saw that thinking, I was like, oh, it gets more faded. Like, oh yeah, you know, damage, you know, it's faded over time. No, it got faded as he was writing. And there's these little splotches, and okay, again, water damage. Oh no, it's snowing. That's the spot from, you know, it's snowing while he's writing. I'm going, okay, that just makes the Civil War real to me. So, yes, sometimes we do look at our stuff, but of course we can't look at everything. We never get anything done. But yes, you know, that's part of it when we're cleaning. You know, I can kind of sort of read, and like Ginny says, yeah, it's very calming, especially if there's no issues going on. As I say, we're going to humidify this page. In fact, we're humidifying another page over there, and we're going to see what it does. And I'm just going to test one page and kind of see what we do. But I have permission to take the stuff off this material because this page is actually pretty brittle. You know.
And you're on the back of it too.
Yes, there's stuff on the back. Yeah. Yeah. So, and there's some bits that are exposed and torn, and so we've got. If I can take it off, I can kind of repair that.
How do you unadhere it in that case?
Adhere it?
How do you have to take it off? How do you unadhere?
Oh, well, they applying moisture because I believe these are moisture activated, these little dots. So I'm
Hoping.
85% confident that moisture is going to help release it as well. How much moisture? We're going to do it very controlled, very minimal. And humidifying is adding, without directly making it wet, adding moisture to it. It absorbs moisture to relax the paper. And maybe it'll be loose enough that I can move this off. If not, we'll do another type of technique that'll be a little more moisture, just add a little bit more. Hopefully, the whole idea is I'm thinking it'll just lift right off. And then, of course, we'll have to kind of, well, not exactly wash it, but we're going to have to clean the old adhesive off the backs of the pages, and probably have to scrape it off, or with a damp blotting paper, and then dry it. So it's going to take a little while.
Bonnie,
Yeah.
it's time to ask this question.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
If I wanted to be you when I grow up,
Yeah.
what college courses, degrees, background would I have to work in this role?
Okay, these days, conservators, that is, professional conservators, there's actually a graduate level degree. There are very few colleges in the U.S. that offer this, but it's a master's level specialization in conservation. And in the field, you know, my background is actually library science. I have a master's in library science, and I got an undergrad degree in history. And so my background is paper and books. Other specialties in the field are wood items, archaeological items, textiles, fine art. So kids should get a bachelor's degree in whatever topic they're interested in. Art history is useful, history, actually anything. They do require a few courses in organic chemistry now. And this is just before you enter and might be accepted into these master's programs. And then it's a graduate level degree. That's what's asked for in current job openings. Now, I started over 30 years ago, and for me, the requirement was a library science degree. And I was interested in working for a library, and as soon as I learned about preservation, and actually, I'll tell you which technique really sold me on it, but I was just like, okay, I'm looking for any job in the library that includes preservation. And this library, which was formerly the Illinois State Historical Library, was looking for someone to set up the conservation lab, to be an in-house facility to work on, to treat the collection. And that was just perfect. You know, I really got into preservation big time.
So you've continued your education as you
Yes,
go
I
along.
am doing it all the time, yes. And sources of information, American Institute for Conservation, otherwise known as AIC, that's a professional organization. Guild of Bookworkers, that's kind of a more artsy type of organization, but you can get a lot about book binding and some of the paper arts in that, so that's always that's a good one. What sold me on preservation in library school was we had a guest professor teaching preservation, and she showed a very simple technique for repairing a book. And of course, I don't have a book to hand, not one that I can play with. I don't want to touch that one. Here, this will be even good example. Tax code. Tax code. Well, here we got a energy users report. Again, I was drawn on it. And it's not. This isn't going to be a great example, but when a book cover, when the text pages start loosening, they kind of fall out of the cover, and you'll find that, and this is not a good question, but this area, this is called a hinge, this groove here. If it's kind of loose there, a very simple repair is to use a knitting needle with glue and get in between here and deposit glue inside this hinge area. And that, I admit, could I get paid for doing that? I just thought I was so darn clever. And yes, it is a method we do use for some things. A lot of times the books we have in our collection have a lot more problems than just a loose hinge. But that's actually a good preventive treatment, because if something's starting to get loose, if we can get that mended, that will prevent the potential for further damage, because if you let the pages continue to get loose, they eventually will tear along. This is an end sheet, and once you get it torn, it becomes a lot more major repair.
What type of glue? Not
Called
Elmer's
PVA,
glue.
polyvinyl acetate, and it's a white flexible glue that it can be softened with heat. It's not entirely reversible, so it's not something we actually like. We would never mend a paper with it. It's more of a mend or attaching. There's the glue right there.
Okay. It's like kindergarten, all your jars.
Yeah. Or like, well, Jenny would have used it on her binder's board to attach the book cloth. So it is for a certain method, certain things. So.
How many items or documents, et cetera, do you have to be redone?
Everything.
Your backlog.
My backlog right now, probably I've got over 200 items waiting here to be worked on. You see a lot of things that are covered up with blotting paper and such, and that's again to protect from the light while it's waiting to get worked on. We just had some special projects this summer, and it was just like I couldn't get to the conservation and treatment work, so we were doing some other stuff. So it's kind of built up a bit. But
Do you use volunteers up here?
well, yes, I do. I have about 7 people right now that have undergone the intensive training, because it does require a lot of training, and this is what Christy, of course, she's an intern, so she's actually getting college credit for this. She's beginning the process. And typically when I have volunteers, I start off teaching the basics of paper conservation, and that includes cleaning and repairs, mending, Another thing we do with a lot of documents is we de-acidify them, and that is a spray that neutralizes acids that are in the paper or ink. And then we encapsulate. So those are the basics. And then beyond that, it kind of depends on the skill level and interests of the person and what projects we have going on. And for instance, Christy's gonna, I hope, have a lot of variety with books and, you know, documents and cutting mats and other stuff. Just depends on what we get this term. And I know we're gonna have, you probably see we got some frames there. These graphics over here on top of the table, the fish, eat more fish, whatever, those are actually reproduced posters from our collection. And I believe that dates possibly from World War I era. Anyway, we have, the originals are really too fragile to use, but our graphics department and the museum has made those reproductions for us. And we're gonna trim them down, mat them, put them in the frames, and put them up in our reading room to be a little more colorful reading room. And periodically change them out, but the reading room has a pretty bright light and variable as far as a little too warm for ideal preservation. And I cannot control the humidity in there because it's related to the outdoors. So this time we're using reproductions of originals, and then they can, I won't care what kind of conditions there are. They're just reproductions, but they're pretty nice, and we're going to try to make them look nice. Okay.
Are you already working on things for the bicentennial?
Not yet. I have been given a heads up that it's coming, but no. My role, or the role of the conservation lab with exhibits that are coming up, is that once they start picking out items, you know, somebody is figuring out the story and desirable things. But if there are things from our collection, then they'll call on me to have a look and say, okay, yeah, well, okay, this has an issue. I don't think we may not be able to use this. Is there something else that we can use? Or, yes, we could fix that, and then I will work with our exhibits department about, you know, how do we display them. And I'll give advice on the paper-based materials of what I think is best for supporting it, to protect it. And I also make any mounts and things for books, and we cut the mats, we make the book cradles. Exhibits department actually makes the mounts for the objects. But we kind of work together on that. And then I get the pieces and we start working on them. And like I got these graphics here that I just got yesterday, and we'll get to work on those and try to get those done pretty quick so we can decorate the walls in the reading room, because they're pretty bare right now.
What was your most valued and, I guess, intriguing project here? Did you do that?
You know, that's like choosing which is your favorite child. We've had so many.
I mean, did you do anything to the Gettysburg Address?
My assistant at the time and I, before this museum opened, we got it, and it was in an older kind of frame, mounted a little bit differently, and we took that off and we remounted it in the currently appropriate fashion, which is actually hinging it with wheat starch paste and that tissue onto the back of the mat board, and then we cut a mat, and it's in a new frame. And the hinge is actually, the tissue is in a V shape. It's folded in half, but it's behind. It's mounted behind, so it's not, so it's hidden. They're just at the corners, and it just allows the document to kind of breathe. It's not held down permanently. It's just at the corners in a little area, and then it's otherwise just laying on the.
But all those letters in the Treasury Gallery, that's all your work?
Yes.
Under the.
All the paper things, all the mats, anything there, we've done it here. All the mats, on the second floor here, we have a baseball exhibit. We did all those mats. And a couple of pieces, like I think I had to remove some tape off one of the pictures, and there was some cleaning of some of the documents, and we encapsulated some of them depending on the piece. That one, gosh, I don't know, Jenny, can you remember how long I don't think we have much time to work on that. The baseball one downstairs, the second floor, gosh. We didn't have a whole lot of time to work on that one.
The mats and so forth?
Yes, maybe a month. And there were 3 or 4 of us, and
Couple weeks? Or
yes,
less?
we might have had a couple of weeks or a little bit less to get those done.
Yeah, that was quick.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we were under a lot of pressure. It's like, okay, quick. You know, and we were almost going. We tried to do like an assembly line. So you know, I would be like, okay, this is a 1 window mat. This is a 2 window mat. You know, and I tried to get them piled up, and then we just grab them and start cutting, and measuring and cutting and everything.
Is there a searchable data file, or if I'm finding an exhibit, I can go look and say, hey, these are 15 pieces, I think you might prepare for us, or anything like that, or you just have to kind of know what things you have.
Oh, as far as like somebody wanted to assemble
An exhibit, yeah, and they're looking at what you have, that they might use.
the way that works in-house is the researcher or whoever's working on my exhibit would go to the different departments and say, okay, I'm interested in this subject, and you know, what kind of things. And they may have to look through online catalog or through the catalogs we have in the various departments. And the staff can also help with that kind of thing too, because they should know the question pretty well.
What's the oldest thing that the library has?
Pardon?
The oldest thing?
What's the oldest thing? Oh, the oldest thing. Yeah, it's a medieval document from.
The Illinois silver
From the Abbey, 1274, yeah, from the Abbey. Yep, that's their oldest thing.
Pretty old.
It has nothing to do with Illinois or Lincoln. It was a part of a collection, someone in the early 1900s who collected autographs, and he donated his whole collection way back then to the library, and that just was one of the pieces. I mean, there's Napoleon and George Washington and I don't know who all, and Lincoln, and you know, there's a whole bunch of autographs, but that was, just happened to be kind of an old document, so it's quite a unique thing. And I'm glad we were able to show that, because it was just kind of unusual. I just want to show you humidifying. There's several ways to humidify. This is just one method. And this is a page out of the Edgar Lee Masters scrapbook. So again, we're just trying. This is called a humidity chamber set up here. And I have this tray. Now, I also have like Rubbermaid containers with the tops on, but I just wanted something a little bigger, so I have this tray, and I've got it covered with acrylic plate, and so my acrylic plate isn't big enough. I just got some saran wrap covering up the rest of it. And what? Oh, this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was leaning against the wall.
No, not really. There we go. You're fine. And so I've got this sitting on, well, this is actually a light diffuser panel. But sometimes I've had just my acrylic plates, I use it, make them up, build them up a little bit. And then underneath I've got a wet towel. And that is what is providing the moisture in this smaller space. And I've got a little humidity indicator card here. And these little cards they're just a quickie, not very precise, but very quick view. Usually, it's all pink now, that means it's very damp in there. And if it's kind of blue, you know, it's a little drier. So pink and blue, and you look at it at a glance and go, oh, it's very damp in here. If I see this in the stacks, I'm gonna really worry. I'm gonna say, we need to dry out the stack areas. But anyway, this is a small area, so I'm building up humidity in a smaller space. That moisture, not directly wet, but just humidity, the paper is absorbing that moisture. That will help it to start relaxing. I've had this in since about 8:45. I'm gonna give it a couple hours, and I've got my gloves on. I have to feel it with my hands, not with the glove. But, and this is fairly thick paper too, so it might take a little longer to absorb. It's still a little stiff yet. I can feel a little bit of moisture. And if I were to take it out, it would feel kind of cool. And if you have a document that's kind of dampish, it will feel cool. You'll know it's dry when it feels room temperature again.
And again, the whole idea is I'm trying to get it to relax a little bit more so I can manipulate it. I'm gonna test and see if I can lift off that newspaper or whatever. I have a feeling I'm gonna need more, but this will, if this isn't enough, at least I'm preconditioning this paper. It's a little more moist, so that if I add a little bit more moisture, there's less of a shock to its system, as it were. And I've talked to people about this, and this is something that people can do at home if you got a rolled up document or one that's folded, and if you were to, like your Civil War letter or something that's folded up, and you try to open it and it really resists opening and it might break right along the fold, you can humidify it to relax the paper enough to be able to easily unfold without it breaking or unroll without it, again, possibly breaking. And what it is I've used like a Rubbermaid container with a lid, and I've used a cookie rack to place the item on. And I'll put like, it depends on how big of the space, but I've used wash rags and just dampen them and put them around. It never touches the original. So you don't want the original getting wet. You just want the source of moisture around. And then you close it up, and I use these little cards to kind of monitor, so it's like, oh yeah, I can see it's damp now, so it's getting going. And within a couple hours, depending on how thick your paper is or whatever, it should be humidified enough to be able to take it out, unfold, unroll, and then you put it between, well, I use blotting paper, but something to absorb moisture, and then under a weight, like a book, and let it flatten, like that paper clock face. You know, we had it between blotting paper and a weight. And actually that, plenty dry now, but I would have left that dry for at least 2 or 3 days to make sure it's totally dry. And you'll find it'll be perfectly flat or whatever to use. Now, sometimes rolled up stuff, you can get it, you know, to lay reasonably flat, put it between blotting paper or absorbent material and a weight, let it sit and dry for a while. And then you take it out, and it might start to curl a little bit, but that's okay. It's much better than when it was really tightly rolled. So humidifying is good. The other caveat, though, is you would never leave this more than 2 days. If anything, I'd say a day, or maybe overnight. Over 2 days, you got high humidity, you've got room temperature, which is kind of warm, you're going to get mold. So this is something, you know, like I'm not going to leave this in more than today, frankly. I don't even know if I'll even leave it overnight, but definitely won't put it 2 days because I already know the stuff had mold on it, so I'm not going to grow new mold. Then you got a much.
Is there anything you can do for mold?
Oh, it's a pain in the half to deal with. They tried to remove well, first of all, you got to get it dry out so it's dormant, not active. If it's active, it's kind of fuzzy and it'll kind of smear if you touch it. So you got to have it dry out first, and then it becomes kind of powdery, and then you got to remove it. And you got to. If you're particularly sensitive, I would recommend a mask. I would recommend cleaning it outdoors so you don't push the mold off into your breathing air. Use soft brush with like soft, well, I'll say bristles, but I mean soft hair. It's very soft brush to brush it off. And I would do it outdoors. Now I have actually a vacuum cleaner that I use that I can control the volume so I can get very low suction, and I have a little setup where the stuff goes into like a jar of water, and I put some bleach in that, and theoretically anything going in that jar, the bleach kills it. But that doesn't mean I'm putting bleach on the original. It's just vacuuming off the mold. Whatever will come off goes into the bleach and gets killed. And I've tried treating a test piece of paper, they say like alcohol, rubbing alcohol, kind of like bursts the cells of the mold and kills it. But I didn't like the effect that it had on my test paper because it stained the paper, the alcohol. And I'm like, okay, fine. I'm not doing any kind of surface treatments other than cleaning what I can, removing what mold I can. And then I'm going to kind of watch it, make sure nothing new is growing in current room conditions. And then like a piece, like a document, whatever, I would probably put it in some kind of an enclosure by itself so it's not touching anything else that's not moldy. previously molded. I'm working on some materials for a time capsule right now. It's a long-term project, and those things are terribly moldy, very, very fragile. And we're trying to clean them up as much as we can and then put them in a polyester sleeve, which is open on two sides, so there's some breathability there. And each individual page gets its own sleeve, and then it'll be, hopefully, they'll be digitally scanned and look at the scans versus the originals, but that's what we'll do. And those pieces are actually going to our public library here in town, because it's part of it's theirs. It's the city's.
That's the Simon collection?
Yes, yeah. And it was the YWCA building, which was torn down in February. They found a time capsule in the cornerstone. So we have the pieces to clean up. But it's a slow process because they're so fragile. I mean, this is fragile, but those are even more so because they're heavily mold damaged, which mold tends to eat into the structure of the paper and actually breaks it up. So literally, if you were to brush mold, if it's really heavily damaged, it just turns to dust. It rubs off the paper and the print. So you have to be just super delicate.
I am working on removing tape from some things we have from Governor Stratton. There are 2 notebooks that are photos from the 1955 and 1956 Illinois State Fair. And they were attached to the notebook with that. This is not archival, so the process is to cut this off, and then on the back we see we have some nasty cellophane tape here, and a label was attached with rubber cement, which we also do not like. So the procedure, well here, let me show you some of the photos are of an era. They're just sweet as they can be. Kids showing their animals at the state fair or their culinary creations. And they're very high quality. Out here, there's quite a few drum majors with their awards. So it's a really cool document of the Illinois State Fair. But the process is to remove the tape, and then that collection, we also make boxes. We make custom-made boxes out of corrugated cardboard, and these are archable. And that procedure requires a lot of math and measuring and cutting with sharp knives. But anyhow, for this particular project, this is called a heated spatula. And once it's heated up, this is my favorite instrument, or tool, by the way. Small spatula, good for many things. We heat up this spatula on the heated spatula. And then go underneath the tape just for a small area, remove the adhesive residue, clean the spatula.
Oh my gosh.
Patience is
I was just saying it's a virtue at this job.
a good thing to have, yes. Reheat it. And we almost have it ready to come off. There. So this is the culprit that goes in the wastebasket.
Is that a dry sponge or?
Oh, sorry, it's a crepe eraser, or also known as rubber cement pickup.
Oh.
So that's essentially what I'm doing, and then I will, because these on onion skin paper attached by rubber cement. Most of them have come loose. I'm going to write in pencil on the back because we don't want that anymore. And then for this collection, I'll make another custom box out of corrugated cardboard.
Acid-free, of course.
Acid-free, everything acid-free. So I put out the tools that I use the most.
Yeah, I got one of those.
Break off knives, a couple sizes of spatulas, tweezers, and a bone folder for making creases in the cardboard,
Cowbone.
whatever. Cowbone.
In case you're wondering.
Yeah.
Cowbone, you said?
It's cow.
Yes.
Cool. Every part of it was being used.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Bonnie and Jenny and Christy for we all have a much better appreciation for all the work that you guys do here every day.